He wasn't born evil. He was made in Vienna, piece by piece, rejection by rejection. And the terrifying lessons are still with us. The year is 1907. Vienna is a city of ghosts and gold. Gas lamps cut through the fog, painting the wet cobblestones in an eerie glow. A young man, not yet a monster, arrives with a portfolio of watercolors. He believes his destiny is to be a great artist. He stands before the admissions board of the Academy of Fine Arts. Men of prestige and power. They glance at his work. Their faces are stone. The verdict is a dagger. Unsatisfactory. The door to his dream is slammed shut in his face. 1 year later, he tries again. The second rejection is colder, more final. He isn't even allowed to sit for the entrance exam. The world of art has cast him out. Permanently. Now he wanders. He sleeps in freezing men's hostels. He paints cheap postcards for tourists to survive. The grand opera houses he passes are a constant mocking reminder of the world that rejected him. A deep personal resentment begins to fester, a cold, burning anger in the pit of his stomach. But this personal failure found a dangerous echo in the city's streets. Vienna was a cauldron of political extremism, pan-German nationalism, vicious popular anti-Semitism. He found a new language for his private bitterness, a public enemy to blame for his private pain. The failed artist was about to find a new canvas. The stab-in-the-back myth, it's more than a historical footnote. It's the fuse that lit the next global conflict. We need to understand why. 1914. A failed artist finds his purpose. Adolf Hitler volunteers for the Bavarian army. He becomes a dispatch runner. He sees the chaos, the death. He earns the Iron Cross. For 4 years, the war is his entire world. It is his home. October 1918. Near Ypres, a British gas attack. The air tastes of chlorine. His eyes burn. He is temporarily blind. He is evacuated to a military hospital in Germany. He is safe, or so he thinks. The hospital ward is quiet, too quiet. White sheets, muffled news from the front. Then the unthinkable happens. November 11th. The armistice. Germany has surrendered. The war is over. But the German army was still on foreign soil. They were not driven back. They were not defeated in the field. The shock turns to rage. How could this happen? The soldiers did not give up. So who did? The question hangs in the air of a broken nation. A simple, poisonous answer begins to form. It was not the generals. It was not the soldiers. It was the politicians, the Jews, the socialists. They had betrayed the army. A stab in the back. This lie, this simple, terrible story, finds a ready audience in a man recovering in a hospital bed, a man who has lost his purpose, and in that lie, he would find a new one. This isn't just history, it's a playbook. The terrifying mechanics of how a democracy unravels piece by piece. The story begins not with jackboots, but with breadlines. Germany, the 1920s, a nation on its knees. The air is thick with shame. The currency is worthless paper. People feel a deep, chilling cold, the cold of hunger, the cold of humiliation. Into this vacuum steps a voice. He is a nobody, a failed painter, a face in the crowd. But in the smoky, stale air of Munich's beer halls, he finds his weapon. Not a gun, a microphone. He doesn't debate economics. He doesn't offer complex policy. He offers something far more powerful, an enemy. He channels the nation's rage, its fear, its desperation, and gives it a single, simple target. The Nazi Party wasn't born in a government office. It was forged in this shared, manufactured hatred. His oratory is electric. A siren song for the lost and the broken, he promises order in the chaos, strength to the weak, a glorious future. The first attempt to seize power in 1923 is a disaster, a failed coup. He is arrested, jailed. The movement seems finished, but in his prison cell, under the dim light, he discovers the real secret to power. He realizes the ballot box, not the bullet, is the path, and that the law itself could be twisted into the perfect weapon. They didn't just persecute, they legislated their victims out of existence, one decree at a time. The ultimate betrayal of law. It began quietly, not with guns, but with ink on paper. In the cold air of September 1935, under the sea of swastika banners, the Nuremberg laws were announced. This was not chaos. This was order. A cold, meticulous plan to redefine a people. The Reich citizenship law stripped them of their rights. Suddenly, neighbors who had lived in Germany for generations were no longer citizens. They were subjects. The law for the protection of German blood made love a crime. It severed human connection, legislating loneliness and isolation. The state now decided who you were, based not on your faith, but on the blood of your grandparents. A single Jewish grandparent could be a death sentence written before you were born. This legal framework was a permission slip for hatred. It gave a green light to violence that had been simmering just beneath the surface. For 3 years, the Prez then, on a bitter November night in 1938, the glass shattered. Kristallnacht, the night of broken glass. The air was thick with smoke, the streets glittering with the debris of synagogues and shattered storefronts. It was a state-sanctioned rampage. Firefighters watched buildings burn, ordered only to protect adjacent German property. The law didn't just look away. It held the torch. But this night of terror was not the final act. It was a test, a public announcement that the laws were no longer just words on a page. They were a license to destroy. They built factories of death, not for goods, but for souls. The chilling logic behind the Holocaust's mass extermination. A failed artist once dreamed of rebuilding cities with grand architecture. Instead, his vision curdled. It became a nightmare blueprint for genocide. The first step was not a gas chamber. It was a wall. Brick by brick, they sealed entire communities off from the world, creating the ghettos. Imagine the biting cold of a Warsaw winter, the gnawing hunger inside cramped, frozen rooms, a constant suffocating fear. These were not meant to be homes. They were holding pens. A slow, deliberate process of starvation and disease. But for the architects of this horror, slow was not efficient enough. In a quiet Berlin suburb, on a cold January morning in 1942, a meeting took place. The Wannsee Conference. Here, the final solution was not debated. It was coordinated. A problem of logistics, a matter of timetables and transportation. The ghettos were to be emptied. The trains began to roll. Cattle cars packed in suffocating darkness. Journeys that lasted for days, with no food, no water, ending in a place with no name on any public map. They arrived at camps built for a single, horrifying purpose. The air smelled of ash. The sky was perpetually gray. This was the final stage of the artist's dream, an assembly line not for products, but for people. And it was all run with the detached precision of a modern corporation. Imagine a world where Auschwitz was a myth. We are closer than you think. The first soldiers arrived to an unnatural silence, not the quiet of peace, the quiet of a vacuum. The air was thick. Heavy with the ghosts of millions, they walked through the gates. They saw the skeletal figures in striped pajamas. They saw the piles of shoes, the mountains of hair. This was not the end of the story. It was the beginning of a new war, a war for truth itself. The evidence was irrefutable. Piles of documents, miles of film, the sworn testimony of survivors, and yet a shadow began to grow. It started as a whisper, a fringe idea. It never happened. The numbers are exaggerated, a poison that seeped into the public mind. The very people who bore witness were fading. Their memories, once sharp as glass, were now fragile, and with each passing year, the distance grew. The commitment was made, a global promise. Never forget. But how do you fight a lie when the living proof is gone? How do you teach a lesson that the world seems desperate to unlearn? The paradox of our time is this. The more we document the horror, the more sophisticated the denial becomes. The fight for memory is not over. It has only just begun.